Hello and welcome back to the Engerati studio at European Utility Week. If you missed the announcement, that is the new name for what used to be Metering Europe. I'm joined here now by one of the sponsors and exhibitors of the event, Philipp Gruner, who is from KG Technologies. And KG Technologies manufacture the tech that allows utility companies to, and I've stolen this phrase from the telecoms world, to control the last mile of utility delivery. Philip, thank you for being here, firstly.
Thank you.
And joining us in the studio. What is it that you're seeing is sort of creating the demand for the technologies that your company brings? So that's one part of my question. The other part of my question is, are you seeing an explosion in demand? Because everybody's hyping the smart grid thing. Mm-hmm. Is it really there? Are we on that inflection curve?
Yeah, we're seeing the growth right now. It's been pushed out a little bit, maybe by about 6 months or so. We were expecting some more ramp up this year, but we're actually now starting to see the ramp up at the end of this year. So the hype is true. You're starting to see the ramp ups in terms of primarily in the European markets, and the products that are in high demand. It's the regulatory bodies that have now decided that there needs to be a switch inside the meters that allow utility companies to control the power. To disconnect should there be an emergency in case of non-payment or for any other potential reasons why they may need to disconnect a home.
I hear that the non-payment reason as the one that's trotted out first by everybody, which is a pretty negative reason for any consumers watching this. Not that that's our audience, but are you seeing other uses of the ability to turn that off? I mean, you know,
of course,
we have a running battle in our household. I turn off all the lights, and the rest of my family doesn't seem to care.
Yes.
You know, are you seeing experimentation with companies doing that maybe for people? The analogy is the auto turn off on the TV type thing.
Well, there's opportunities not only for non-payment to disconnect a home, but if I can give an example of the USA market, which I'm quite familiar with, being based out of California. For instance, the city of Phoenix and Las Vegas, they've completely overbuilt homes during the housing boom in 2005 and 2006. They just built more homes than they could sell. So, but they're still connected to the grid. And even if there's no appliances running inside, just having the wires already creates a load and it draws power. And unfortunately, that power, since there's no resident there, is being paid for by all the other consumers. And being able to disconnect those homes off the grid will actually reduce the energy costs for everybody else that's out there. Or in high turnover areas, college campuses, other areas where maybe there's more temporary workers that come and go, being able to disconnect the home and reconnect it remotely provides an advantage to the utility companies by reducing also their carbon footprint without having to send out techs to actually manually connect and disconnect. Clearly, yeah. So it's definitely a positive thing, and of course people who don't pay their utility bills are going to be upset about this, but everybody else who pays will actually stand to benefit, since it's unfortunately those who actually have to carry the cost of those who don't pay.
And that's an important thing. It's a bit like when you explain to people that a TV on standby is still not off.
Exactly.
And
yes.
what you're saying is that actually if we have a switch that truly turns everything off, in aggregate, you're saving a huge amount of power.
Definitely.
Yeah. What do you think? You mentioned earlier on that you're seeing the boom in demand primarily in Europe. What's going on in Europe that you feel is creating that? And we'll then go back to your home country and analyze what's going on there.
Well, I think it's the European mandate that by 2020, 80% of all meters need to be smart. And most of these utility companies now have demanded there's a switch inside that allows the utility to actually control those. So you've seen some of the first rollouts or massive rollouts coming in Spain with Iberdrola and Endesa. France Linky project for ERDF is one that everybody's keeping their eye on, since it's a very large market. The UK also is looking to replace a lot of meters over the next few years. So you're starting to see those utility companies actually implementing the rollout, which it took some time because they had to, train the staff to actually replace the meters, build the infrastructure for the data concentrators, which the meters can communicate with. And it all then trickles down to companies like us, which is a component manufacturer of the meters themselves. So we usually see then the ramp up happening a little bit later than the meter manufacturers themselves, but being able to be participating in that, we actually do get to experience that massive rollout that we're expecting for quite some time and happy to see come now.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of expectation, but the regulation kind of had to sort itself out before companies made the plunge into the investment. So where are the other sort of new markets that you're seeing? I mean, I would imagine that while you say that the investment lands at your company, it takes some time, you must be getting some insights in terms of where people are trying to build out sort of the next geographic area where we're going to see a little bit of a boom in terms of smart metering.
Well, outside of Europe, I think the next big market that we're heavily focusing on is the Brazilian market. There has also been some in-battling there with the regulatory bodies that have not been able to agree yet on how the standards should be met. But luckily, it seems that they've come to an agreement or are very close to finalizing the standards. And with 64 million meters that need to be replaced in Brazil, of course, that's a very hot market to compete in as well. China, with their state grid initiative, has been one of the most aggressive markets, planning to replace 120 million meters the next few years. So those are two markets which are just on the verge. Well, China's already in the implementation stage, but Brazil just on the verge of getting going. And with India, with the power outage they had recently of 600 million people with no power, it's become even more important to them to actually upgrade the grid. And it's much quicker and cheaper to actually optimize the grid right now than to build new power plants because demand is always increasing. So it's more important to effectively manage the power you already have. And
have that efficiency in the grid. So if you're generating more power, you aren't wasting half of it. And I'm struggling to remember the resistance equation, but I think it goes up as with voltage squared, doesn't it? So the amount of loss you've got. That was pretty impressive, I could remember. And you've been sort of seeing what's going on out on the show floor and things like that. And I'm asking everybody this just because you're in the industry and your opinion holds weight. What are you seeing out there that's new or exciting to you when you walk around?
Well, I'm seeing a lot more players. The market is really changing. You're seeing either a lot of consolidation, meter companies merging together, and then you see other big players that are coming up that are being introduced into the market. So especially walking around the show early this morning, I've noticed there's a lot more companies out there that I have not seen before. But what's also very interesting is now the smart home side, and not only the smart grid, because it's, of course, very important to make the grid efficient, but if then the homeowner is not, the power draw will still be as high as it was before. So now on the smart home side, being able to actually individually control appliances, whether it be an air conditioner or a hot water heater, refrigerator.
Are you actually seeing those connections being made? Because we've been researching it, the market, and one of the warnings we've been giving to the industry is, the smart home could be a dumb home if everything doesn't connect back to the meter and you can react in the same time. So if that that last bit of connectivity, whether you're going to use Zigbee or whatever as a protocol is in there. So we're sort of seeing that may be an issue, but are you actually seeing the rollouts? Would you corroborate that it might be an issue?
I would probably say that the smart home market is now where maybe smart metering was maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
So it's in the early development phase, a lot of more trial and error type situations where companies are more or less connecting either through LAN networks or Wi-Fi networks that allow then the homeowner to control on an individual basis, but not necessarily all fully networked together. And we'll probably be seeing that happening as more and more standards are being set for the market. But at this point, I would agree, it's not fully there yet, but we're starting to see the early phases of it. And I've been working now, or attending these shows for 10 years, so I've been able to see now how the market has developed here, and it's given me then some patience on the smart home side to actually also envision where it will be in 5 or 6 years.
So you reckon we got a 5-year play until we hit a tipping point?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, there's some companies that are making smart appliances already, but it's not been that high in demand. I think the smart grid first needs to really fully take hold so that you can take advantage of the smart home. If the smart grid's not there, the smart home really does not do much.
I suppose that makes sense. It's a bit like one of the analogies in cloud computing. Without having that platform to innovate off the back of.
Exactly.
You need to get that stable and robust. And you mentioned standards a couple of times, and we're nearly at the end of time. But let me ask you this question, because it's one of the other areas that we've identified is the need for standards, and we're living in a world that's much more connected.
Of course.
So. See, so Japan and China maybe making the running on standards. Where do you see that going? Do you think that we need a sort of a global standard, which I suppose would help you guys as well? Where everybody's playing with the same plugs.
It would help if it were more standardized, I should say, but. The grids differ, so you have the USA grid running off 120 volts in the homes versus 240 in Europe. That then changes how much current is being drawn. So I understand there needs to be some differentiation between the standards themselves, but overall I believe that they do tend to mirror each other. While they are not necessarily identical, the same premise follows between them. So on our side for the latching relays, I would say that overall the standards have been out there, but have not been necessarily fully implemented. And that's been one of our goals, to actually be a company that fully meets the requirements of the standards that are out there, while others, have been able to potentially have a product out there that does the job, but may not fully meet the standards. And so that's been something that we've been heavily focusing on within our internal company.
That's one of the USPs of your product in terms of ticking the standards and everything.
Exactly.
That's a free plug for you right there.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Standard compliant. Well, thank you for making the time to come up here and discuss some of the issues going on in the market. And thank you for watching this Angerati production at European Utility Week, and we hope to see you again soon.